what is he proposing? I mean, he always says it's free college, and everybody loves hearing this. What is it exactly?
What he's proposing is relief for more than 20 million American families who have kids in college right now, because everybody out there knows what's happened with tuition. Look at this, early 80s over here, and look at how it's risen up here, so that now for a public college now, on average, $17,000 a year. Many people can't handle that. So when he talks about free college, he really has several steps in mind. That's $75 billion per year over 10 years.
Free college for everyone going to a public school in the United States would cost $75 billion a year.
Nancy Pelosi's outsmarting Trump at every move, except Trump's getting everything he ever wanted. Despite the widespread Democratic opposition to the $735 billion NDAA produced by House and Senate conferences, Congress is expected to send the fiscal 2020 legislation to the White House as soon as this week. At the same time that this is Pocan. At the same time that this administration has cut food stamps, Medicaid, and reproductive health services from everyday Americans, this president wants to add more than $100 billion to continue endless and unauthorized wars.
Can we afford free college? Yes, we can. Free college for every student going to a public university in the United States is $75 billion a year. In December of 2019, Nancy Pelosi gave President Donald Trump $735 billion for his defense budget next year. 2 years ago, in 2017-2018, this graph shows we were spending $649 billion on defense. We've increased defense spending $86 billion in 2 years, yet no one talks about how we could have used that money to pay for free college for everybody going to a public school in the country. Additionally, you'll notice we spend more money on defense than the next 7 countries combined. Yet the Democratic Party doesn't talk about this issue, and nearly every Democrat in the House and the Senate voted for a $735 billion defense bill next year.
Hey, how about the idea the Democrats propose we cut the budget? Have you heard that happening? We take $100 billion out of the military and we give it to homeless people and students? No.
This is a situation where Elizabeth Warren has got a plan to tackle one big problem facing more than 45 million Americans. It is to wipe out student debt. Let's take a look at the details of her plan. First of all, she would wipe out up to $50,000 in student debt for 42 million Americans, all those with incomes under $100,000. Secondly, she would use money to wipe out tuition at public colleges and universities. Third, she would put a bunch of money into Pell Grants to cover non-tuition expenses. And finally, there's a fund to finance, assist in financing historically black colleges. Total cost, $1.25 trillion. How does she pay for her agenda, including this program? She's got that $2.7 trillion wealth tax, 2% on wealth of $50 million, an additional 1% on wealth above $1 billion. She's got a real corporate tax, 7% on corporate profits exceeding $100 million. Higher estate taxes, total tax bill for what she wants to bring in, $4.1 trillion over 10 years, and she hasn't even spent all that money yet, Kelly, in the program she's proposed so far.
Yeah.
You'll notice in her plan to pay for free college, Elizabeth Warren never mentions cutting the defense budget. That seems kind of odd, because if you had cut the defense budget 10%, you'd almost pay for free college. Free college is $75 billion, and a 10% cut to next year's defense budget is $73 billion.
Again, they can't oppose Trump on substance like his military budget, because if the Democrats did, they'd be opposing the establishment, which they represent.
So the Democrats in the House who claim they're for millennials and want to reduce the cost of college voted to greatly increase military spending. Is the same true in the Senate? Yes, it is. In 2017, all 3 of these Democratic hopefuls, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Elizabeth Warren, the poster child for free college herself, all voted to increase military spending in the summer of 2017 by more than $60 billion. That would nearly pay for free college for all. All three of these senators chose not to cast a vote in the most recent December 2019 defense bill. They abstained or were not voting. Only 14 members of the U.S. Senate voted no or abstained when passing this massive defense bill. This should be very troubling to you if you're a millennial who wants college to be more affordable, because don't look to the Democratic Party to make that happen for you.
This is from Roll Call. Democrats got completely rolled in NDAA talks. The NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, that's the defense budget. You know how we were spending $500 billion at the height of the Iraq War, and now we're spending $730-something billion, which is over a 40% increase? In the military, since the height of the Iraq War, it should be going the other way. We've exploded it. Democrats got completely rolled. Well, here we go. The final defense authorization measure for the current fiscal year represents a victory for Republicans. I thought Nancy Pelosi was steely. Republicans are generally pleased with the outcome, after having fiercely resisted the earlier version written in the Democratic-controlled House. In fact, in a stunning reversal of the norm, not a single House Republican voted for the massive Pentagon policy measure on the floor in July. So when Nancy Pelosi came up with her thing, she couldn't get one Republican to go along with it. Not one. And so what did she do? She then rolled over for them. With the specter of a possible Trump veto looming over the conference on the House and Senate bills, and the congressional Republicans standing united, the conference committee laid waste to a long list of progressive provisions that were either in the House bill or that the Democrats had wanted added to the final product. So the Democrats have spineless again. And here they are. The Republicans stay united. The Democrats caved. What was the point of voting for Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats to take over the House? They are caving at every turn. The things that they laid waste to, these included everything from tougher regulations on toxic chemicals in drinking water on military bases, to anti-discrimination protections for transgender troops, to restrictions on Trump's attempts to use military money to build barriers on the U.S.-Mexico border, and much more. Hey, how about the idea the Democrats propose we cut the budget? Have you heard that happening?
Believe that. The truth of the matter is that my policies are so mainstream that, if I had said the same policies that I have back in the 1980s, I'd be considered a moderate Republican. I mean,
America's transformation from republic to economic superpower following World War II was accompanied by the creation of a global network of military bases unlike any other in history. According to the Pentagon's Base Structure Report, today these amount to 716 in 38 countries. More than 250,000 soldiers are stationed on these bases. In addition to this, the US has a military presence in 110 countries around the world. A year after his election, Barack Obama approved the new administration's first military budget. This amounts to $680 billion, $30 billion more than Bush's last defense budget.
We take $100 billion out of the military and we give it to homeless people and students? No. Again, they can't oppose Trump on substance like his military budget, because if the Democrats did, they'd be opposing the establishment, which they represent. They represent Raytheon, they represent Boeing, and they represent Wall Street, and they represent Big Pharma. That's why the Democrats have to oppose Trump on Russiagate and a phone call to Ukraine. Because if they oppose him on this, their donors would get mad at them. A coalition of 31 liberal organizations representing disarmament, human rights, and other causes said in a statement Tuesday that the NDAA outcome is a near complete capitulation in checking the Trump administration's military priorities. So now listen to how she talks about how Nancy Pelosi is such a genius. They love doing this. They love, again, Russiagate was walls are closing in. Right? Walls are closing in. The writing's on the wall.
The end is near?
The end is near. And that was catnip for MSNBC viewers. And then the walls never closed in. The Mueller report and landed. It was a big dud, and it was all over, and their ratings went in the tank. And now they're doing impeachment, and they're doing it again. And so they're trying to make you think that Nancy Pelosi is a genius. And, she's going to get him. Nancy Pelosi's outsmarting Trump at every move, except Trump's getting everything he ever wanted. And how do I? Well, here, let's watch this.
But I think Frank Figliuzzi here would agree she could. But I think Frank Figliuzzi here would agree she could double as someone with a degree in psyops. I mean, she has gotten under his skin in the category of diminishing him, making him look and feel smaller, and really checkmating him on the politics by narrowing the articles to two undeniable facts: that he abused his power and then he proudly pounds his chest over obstructing this investigation. Take us inside whether or not that was debated, and how she landed on sort of keeping this squarely in the undeniable, indisputable range in terms of the facts that have emerged.
Well, the president is used to dealing with congressional leaders who bend to his will and cater to his whims, and Nancy Pelosi doesn't do that. She's steely. She looks straight ahead and kind of barrels through any problems and concerns.
So keep that in mind. Nancy Pelosi she doesn't bend to Trump's will. He's used to dealing with people who bend his will. She doesn't. She's very steely. And she gets under Trump's skin like that, and she just diminishes him. That's what MSNBC's story is about Nancy Pelosi. That's them gaslighting their own viewers. And who do they hire to do it? One of the biggest gaslighters ever, somebody who lied for a torturer and a war criminal, George Bush. That was her job. She was the mouthpiece of a war criming organization. Nancy Pelosi, complete capitulation. I thought she was steely. Trump's never dealt with someone like her. She's diminished him. Complete capitulation. Do you see how MSNBC is just a gaslighting, lying organization, and they're doing a disservice to our country worse than Fox News? In a statement, Pocan, so this is Pocan is the co-chair of the Progressive Caucus in the House. And he said that he called for a national conversation. He called for a national conversation on repeated increases to defense spending. How about you propose a budget that cuts the spending instead of having a conversation? Pocan, how about you do that? How about you actually get your progressives together to not vote for this?
Political war of words has erupted into a full-blown public feud. It's playing itself out between two Democrats, 2016 presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, current 2020 contender Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, and neither are mincing words. The battle started when Clinton said this about Gabbard during a podcast.
I'm not making any predictions, but I think they've got their eye on somebody who's currently in the Democratic primary and are grooming her to be the third-party candidate. She's the favorite of the Russians. They have a bunch of sites and bots and other ways of supporting her so far. And that's assuming Jill Stein will give it up, which she might not, because she's also a Russian asset. Yeah, she's a Russian asset. I mean, totally.
Gabbard didn't hold back in slamming Clinton, calling her the queen of warmongers, embodiment of corruption and personification of the rot that has sickened the Democratic Party for so long.
Why can't we fix the war spot?
Yeah.
It seems like we could.
Yeah.
If we can help Iraq, if we can invade Syria, if we can do some of the things that people either want us to do or we have done, why can't we do that?
Exactly. And that's what I often remind people is that right now, today, we spend $4 billion every month in Afghanistan. $4 billion.
Every month.
Every single month. Imagine what could be done with those dollars and those resources in communities like Baltimore, in communities like Flint, Michigan, where people are still being poisoned.
Congressman Paul, South Carolina has 7 major military bases and thousands of people employed in the defense industry. But you want to make major cuts in defense spending, several $100 billion in the coming years, that inevitably would cost South Carolina jobs. What do you say to people in this state who worry that your military plans would hurt the national security and cost South Carolina jobs?
I would say your question suggests you're very confused about my position. I want to cut money, overseas money. That's what I want to do. I want to cut military money. I don't want to cut defense money. I want to bring the troops home. I'd probably have more bases here at home. We were closing them down in the 1990s and building them overseas. That's how we got into trouble. So we would save a lot more money and have a stronger national defense, and that's what we should do. But to say that we would be weaker is absolutely wrong.
Just to be clear, your plan calls for freezing defense spending at 2006 levels, which is well below where we are today.
You still don't understand.
What's he missing, Congressman?
You don't understand there's a difference between military spending and defense spending. Just because you spend $1 billion on an embassy in Baghdad, bigger than the Vatican, you consider that defense spending. I consider that waste. So now
he calls for a national conversation on repeated increases to the national defense spending, noting that Congress has boosted the Pentagon's budget $131 billion during Trump's first term. Hey, how about you ask that to Nancy Pelosi? Why don't you ask her to have a conversation? Are you allowed to have a conversation with the woman you voted for Speaker? Why don't you have a conversation with her? Because if you had a national conversation, you know what that conversation is. Everybody in the goddamn country would say, cut the goddamn military spending and get out of those wars. That's what they would say. But Pocan is also beholden to Nancy Pelosi. So he's not criticizing Nancy Pelosi. And this is why it's a fool's errand to shepherd progressives into the Democratic Party. Do you see what the Democrats are doing? At the same time that this is Pocan. At the same time that this administration has cut food stamps, Medicaid, and reproductive health services from everyday Americans, this president wants to add more than $100 billion to continue endless and unauthorized wars, bans transgenders, troops, keep Guantanamo Bay open, allow the unchecked contamination of water supplies, and establish a space force. And guess what? Your leadership went along with that.